Hello everyone, welcome to Postcard Buddhism, the best channel for sharing knowledge about Buddhism. Today, we will talk about the topic, craving is suffering. In Buddhist teachings, craving is often identified as the root cause of all suffering. Whether it is the desire for material possessions, comfort, respect, or fame, these cravings bind us to the cycle of samsara, the endless loop of birth, death, and rebirth. When we crave, we become attached, and this attachment leads to dissatisfaction and suffering. As Nagarjuna wisely pointed out, actions driven by greed, hatred, and delusion are non-virtuous and accumulate negative karma, perpetuating our suffering. So let's delve deeper into understanding how craving manifests in our lives and the profound ways it impacts our journey towards true peace and enlightenment. Craving is suffering. Not pursuing craving is the practice of Dharma. Pursuing craving is not practicing Dharma. The matter is as simple as that. The entire essential meaning of opening the doors of the holy Dharma, these teachings coming from the golden mouths of the Kadampa Geshes, what they have practiced and realized is to cut off the 8 worldly concerns, to free oneself from the craving attachment to this life. Whether you practice Dharma or not, the evil thought of the 8 worldly concerns is the source of all obstacles and problems. All undesirable things arise from thoughts of these 8 worldly concerns. When you are told to renounce craving, you feel as if you are being told to sacrifice your happiness. You renounce craving, and then you are unhappy and have nothing left. Just you. Your craving is confiscated, your happiness is stolen, and you feel empty, like a deflated ball. You feel as if your heart is no longer in your body, as if you have lost your life. That is because you do not understand the faults of craving. You do not realize that the nature of craving is suffering. Craving itself is a suffering, sick mind. Because of craving, the mind generates delusions, and you cannot recognize that there is another happiness, a true happiness. For instance, when craving an object and enjoying it, you label this experience as happiness. It appears to you as happiness, but in reality, it is only suffering. When you keep performing actions such as eating, your happiness does not increase, but only decreases. When your stomach is full, your happiness turns into suffering. Before you realize the suffering nature of the action, it seems to be happiness, but when you recognize it, it becomes suffering. When suffering is not recognized, the feeling is labeled as pleasure and appears as pleasure. But as you continue the action, the feeling gradually turns into suffering. The peace you experience by renouncing craving leads you to nirvana, the state of no afflictions. This peace, the absence of craving, allows you to fully develop and achieve enlightenment. You can permanently experience this peace. From the first time you free yourself from thoughts of worldly concerns, from craving, you begin to develop this peace in the continuum of your mind, and eventually, you experience it permanently. If you feel that by sacrificing craving, you are sacrificing your happiness and are left with nothing, remember that all your problems are based on craving and thoughts of worldly concerns. Not knowing that the nature of craving is suffering, you cannot recognize that there is a better happiness. You cannot realize that by sacrificing thoughts of worldly concerns, by liberating your mind from craving, you have true peace, real happiness. This happiness does not depend on any external sensory object. It is developed within your own mind. With your mind, you can develop this peace. For instance, if you have a skin disease that makes you itchy, to soothe the itch, you scratch so much that you end up in pain. Rather than labeling the relief from itching that scratching brings as pleasure, isn't it better to have no illness at all? Isn't it better to renounce the illness? Having craving is like having this skin disease. Without craving, there would be no cause for all problems arising from craving. There would be no progression. If we did not have this body, this samsara, created by delusion and karma, and polluted by the seeds of delusion, we would not have to experience heat and cold, hunger and thirst, and all other problems. We would not have to worry about our existence or spend so much time and money caring for our bodies. We are busy just to maintain this body to look good. From head to toe, we make a lot of effort to decorate this body. We waste our precious human life in doing that. However, when you are sick, even taking medicine cannot always cure you. Therefore, isn't it better not to have this body, this samsara? then you would not have to experience all these problems. Without craving, you would have a lot of peace in your mind, a peace that can be developed and perfected. This work has an end. Seeking samsaric pleasure by relying on external objects of craving is an endless task. No matter how much work you do toward that end, it never finishes. Like the waves in the ocean appearing one after another, that work never ceases. First, temporary happiness, which is dependent on external sensory objects, has the nature of suffering. And secondly, no matter what you do, there is no way to end the work aimed at achieving temporary happiness. Less craving, less suffering, as Nagarjuna taught in a verse often recited by Dramtumpa. Gain or loss, pleasure or pain, praise or blame, fame or disgrace. These 8 worldly concerns are not the objects of our mind. For us, they are all the same. It is easy to understand how loss, suffering, hearing unpleasant sounds, disgrace, infamy, and criticism, blame, can become problems. These things are commonly considered to be problems. But you may not realize that gaining, achievement, happiness, hearing pleasant sounds, fame, and praise are also problems. However, they are entirely the same. They are entirely problems. But the objects themselves are not the problem. Wealth is not the problem. So what is the problem? The problem is the mind of craving and attachment to wealth. That is the problem. Having a friend is not a problem. The mind's attachment to friends makes having a friend a problem. Craving makes possessing these 4 things, material wealth, comfort, pleasant sounds, and praise, into a problem. If there is no craving, no worldly concern, then having or not having these objects does not become a problem. Maybe one night when you are sleeping comfortably, you are suddenly disturbed by a mosquito bite. If you have strong worldly concern, intense craving for comfort, you will be very upset by the mosquito bite. Just because of one mosquito bite. This is not dangerous, it cannot cause a serious illness. The mosquito only sucks a tiny drop of blood from your body. But when you see the mosquito's body filled with your blood, you are shocked. You become angry at the mosquito and uncomfortable all night. The next day, you complain about the mosquito all day long. Last night I lost many hours of sleep. Losing sleep for one night or even a few hours is like losing a precious gem. You are as upset as someone who lost $1 million. For some people, even such a small problem becomes huge. There are also people who crave praise and respect from others. If you do not pay attention to them and lift your face when passing by, or say 1 or 2 disrespectful words that they do not expect to hear, it causes tremendous suffering in their hearts. Or if you give them something in a disrespectful manner, whether intentionally or not, it also causes great suffering. For those who have too many expectations, too much attachment, even the pain from a small physical act they do not like becomes huge. It feels like an arrow has been shot into their heart. Suddenly, anger arises intensely. Suddenly their body becomes very tense. Their face, previously serene and peaceful, now becomes almost terrifying, puffing up, their ears and nose turning red and blood vessels standing out on their forehead. Suddenly, their entire disposition becomes extremely rude and unpleasant. The more a person desires praise and respect, the greater the suffering in their heart when they do not receive them. The other objects of craving are similar. The more one craves material possessions, comfort, happiness, pleasant sounds, and praise, the more they suffer when they experience the opposite. If you hope that a friend will always be cheerful, smiling, respectful, kind, and always do what you want, but one day they unexpectedly do something small against your wishes, that tiny thing causes incredible pain in your heart. All of this relates to worldly concern, to having too strong a desire for something. The less craving you have for the 4 desirable objects, the fewer problems you will encounter when facing the 4 undesirable objects. Less craving means less suffering. If you cut off attachment to this life, you will not suffer when you experience criticism or do not receive something because you are not attached to praise or receiving things. Similarly, when you are not attached to expecting your friends to always be kind to you, always smile at you, and always help you when you ask, you do not suffer when those friends change and do the opposite of what you want. Your heart does not hurt. Your mind remains calm and peaceful. By cutting off attachment to the 4 desirable objects, you do not have problems when the 4 undesirable situations arise. They do not hurt you. They cannot disturb your mind. The thought of worldly concerns clings to the four desirable objects of this life. Without this thought, your mind is very calm and peaceful, so that you are not disturbed when encountering the four undesirable things. And encountering the four desirable objects does not disturb you either. If someone praises you, it does not matter. If someone criticizes you, it cannot disturb your mind. Your life is stable, and your mind is peaceful. There are no ups and downs. This levels out the 8 worldly concerns. How do you keep your mind peaceful when problems arise? How do you protect your mind so that experiencing the 4 undesirable things does not disturb you? It is by recognizing that attachment to the 4 desirable objects is the problem. You must realize the faults of the 4 desirable objects and abandon attachment to them. This is fundamental psychology. If you use this method, undesirable situations will not disturb you. Geshe Chengawa balanced the 8 worldly concerns by reciting this verse. Happiness when life is comfortable and suffering when it is troublesome. All activities aimed at the happiness of this life should be abandoned like poison. Virtue and non-virtue are just functions of the mind. Cut off non-virtuous motivations as well as motivations that are neither virtuous nor non-virtuous. The last line refers to actions of the body and speech with unclear motivations. These actions are called unpredictable actions. The best way to train our mind is to expect the 4 undesirable objects more than the 4 desirable ones. Expect criticism and disrespect. Practicing this renunciation, which cuts off craving, is optimal psychology. When you have trained your mind to expect undesirable things, when the undesirable actually happens, it does not become a shock for you. It does not hurt you because you are expecting it. Before understanding the Dharma, before practicing meditation, you viewed troubles, suffering, unpleasant sounds, criticism, and loss as unwanted problems. Now, if you thoroughly examine the nature of attachment to material things, comfort, pleasant sounds, and praise, you will not see it as happiness. You will see that it is also suffering. It is not the happiness you thought it was before understanding the Dharma. It is not peaceful. It is suffering. The mind is stuck to the object of craving. When you receive praise, you are so smart. You speak so well. You understand the Dharma deeply. Your mind is stuck in the praise and is no longer free. Like a body chained tightly, the mind is tied by attachment. The mind is stuck like glue to an object, or like a moth flying into a melting candle. Its entire body, wings, and limbs are completely soaked in the candle wax. The body and limbs of the moth are so fragile that it is extremely difficult to remove them from the wax. Or like a fly stuck in a spider web. Its limbs are tightly wrapped in the web, and removing them from it is very difficult. Or like ants in honey, attachment is the mind being stuck to an object. Craving is the source of all problems. As Lama Atisha mentioned in the great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment, we pursue with the hope of satisfaction, but the pursuit of craving only leads to dissatisfaction. In reality, the result of pursuing craving is only dissatisfaction. You continuously strive but only experience dissatisfaction. Pursuing craving and not achieving satisfaction is the main problem of samsara. For example, having cancer or AIDS is not the main problem. Compared to the problem of pursuing craving and not being satisfied, cancer and AIDS are nothing. They do not continue from life to life. While you have a perfect human life, if you do nothing about the problem of craving in this life, it will continue from life to life. The continuous pursuit of craving binds you to samsara, causing you to experience the sufferings of the 6 realms constantly, endlessly. If you do not stop pursuing craving, there is no true satisfaction, no real peace. Pursuing craving only leads to dissatisfaction and endless experiences of the sufferings of samsara in one of the 6 realms. The thought of the 8 worldly concerns continuously brings all the illnesses that terrify us. Continuously from life to life, it brings all the serious problems that a human can experience. It creates karma for us to continuously experience these problems. The thought of the 8 worldly concerns, the craving attachment to this life, is the most serious disease. Compared to worldly problems, other problems are nothing. If you do not have the thought of the 8 worldly concerns, which binds you to samsara, even if someone kills you, all you do is transition to another body. Your consciousness takes another perfect human body or goes to a pure realm. Being killed serves as a condition for transitioning to another body. But if you have the thought of the 8 worldly concerns and do not practice Dharma, even if no one kills you and you live to be 100 years old, you constantly use your precious human body to create the causes of the lower realms. You use your fortunate rebirth to cause the conditions for unfortunate rebirths with no opportunity to practice Dharma. The longer you live, the more negative karma you create, leading you to live in the lower realms and experience suffering for many lifetimes. Therefore, the thought of the 8 worldly concerns is far more harmful than an enemy who simply kills you. Lama Tsongkhapa's quote on the pursuit of craving continues. Craving brings many other problems. By pursuing craving, the mind becomes coarse and unpeaceful. Hundreds of problems arise from dissatisfaction. When craving is strong, it is easy to become angry, for example. The stronger the attachment, the more intense the anger that arises. If you do not have strong attachment, you do not get very angry when someone annoys you. You might still be upset, but less than before. Anger, jealousy, etc. arise in relation to attachment. Due to attachment, these other negative thoughts appear. When any of these negative thoughts appear, you create negative karma, the cause of the lower realms. When your mind is overwhelmed by craving, completely polluted by craving, you cannot meditate. Even if you have some understanding of emptiness, for instance, it is difficult to have any experience of it. When your mind is calm and peaceful, you may have some experience of it. But when your mind is polluted, a thick fog covers everything, and you cannot meditate on emptiness. Furthermore, you cannot think about the faults of craving. When you strongly crave an object, you become very miserable if you cannot be near it. You cannot be calm. Your body does not rest because your mind is not at ease. Since your mind is not at ease due to craving, even if you have no particularly hard work to do, you have no physical comfort or relaxation. There are many examples of the faults of craving. Think of alcoholics and drug addicts. Their lives become miserable, decadent, to the point where they cannot do anything. Moreover, they damage their awareness and memory. Illnesses come from the dissatisfied mind of craving, the evil thought of worldly concerns, because dissatisfaction creates the conditions for illness. Then you suffer from illness for many years, with enormous unwanted expenses amounting to thousands of dollars. When you cannot earn money properly, you may resort to stealing. Your mind becomes chaotic. You become mentally and physically exhausted, and may even end up in a hospice. And what is the root of all this? It is a moment of uncontrollable craving. That moment when you do not protect yourself from the thought of the 8 worldly concerns, when you do not practice Dharma, brings many problems. The problems continue year after year, costing you a lot of money and making your life unnecessarily complicated and difficult. All this anxiety and expense are due to the thought of the 8 worldly concerns. If from the beginning you protected yourself from attachment to worldly concerns, all those years of unwanted problems and expenses would not have occurred. You would never have to experience them. It is clear that this is the source of AIDS, which appears when a person is driven by the 8 worldly concerns. When I asked people infected with AIDS through sexual activity about their mental state when they began experiencing symptoms, some said it was an extremely strong sexual craving. During the period of that immoral mental state, each day they began to experience fever, sweating, and weakness. Fundamentally, all illnesses, including AIDS and cancer, arise from the thought of the 8 worldly concerns. Relationship problems are similar. In one way or another, if we do not exert some control, relationship problems can continue. Life becomes hell. Before even reaching the real hell, we experience hell in a human body. There is hell everywhere. You feel completely trapped, suffocating. You cannot even breathe. When your craving is not met, when you do not get what you want, that is when nervous breakdowns and suicidal thoughts occur. Recently, someone studying Dharma in Switzerland had such problems and committed suicide. He hanged himself. I think he had heard some Dharma teachings but had not practiced or done retreats much. He had a very good job, earning a lot of money, but he had relationship problems. Because of such problems, you may have experienced suicidal thoughts about ending your life many times. Fundamentally, this is a fault of the worldly craving mind. Geshe Kadampa Gonpawa, who had clairvoyance and many other realizations, said, "If we receive the 4 desirable results of comfort, material wealth, good reputation, and praise from an action performed with the thought of the 8 worldly concerns, it is only a result in this life and has no benefit in future lives. And if that action brings the 4 undesirable results, we gain no benefit even in this life. In any case, actions performed with the thought of the 8 worldly concerns that bring the 4 desirable results will ultimately lead to the 4 undesirable results. For example, in business, you may achieve one success after another. Due to that success, you act more and more with the thought of the 8 worldly concerns. After some time, the karma of your success is exhausted, and the karma of failure is experienced. In just one day, you can become a beggar. One day you are a billionaire. The next day, you do not know how to pay rent or feed your family. Your whole life collapses. This is because you acted with the thought of the 8 worldly concerns. Although you achieved material comfort, you are not satisfied and continue to act with worldly thoughts. Due to your past success, one day the karma of your success is exhausted, and everything collapses. The person who was wealthy yesterday, without financial worries, suddenly today worries even about caring for the family. He does not know what to do and cannot eat or sleep. Even if you succeed in stealing once, twice, or 3 times, for example, your success cannot continue indefinitely. You need to control your craving. You need to feel satisfied. Otherwise, if you continue to steal, one day you will surely be caught. No matter what the mistake is, by continually repeating it, one day it will certainly become a big problem. Another fault of craving is that it ultimately leads to many undesirable things. Freeing yourself from craving is a great protection. Cutting attachment to an object or person means other negative thoughts do not arise, and you do not create negative karma as a result. It provides incredible protection. Typically, by being attached to a specific object, you create much negative karma in relation to many other beings. By cutting attachment, you prevent the causes of the lower realms. Great peace arises when you free yourself from the thought of craving. Focus on this true peace that you can immediately experience by freeing yourself from craving. When you focus on this, there is no problem. When you strive for this great happiness, this true peace, temporary happiness becomes insignificant and not too difficult to abandon, perhaps as satisfying as picking up used toilet paper. If you are mindful of this, you are not at risk of becoming desperate or insane. Thus, no matter how many problems we encounter, we have no choice but to practice Dharma. And practicing Dharma means mastering our mind, mastering craving. Forget about living an ascetic life of pure Dharma practice. At the very least, we need to master craving for inner peace and happiness in this life, and to prevent the development of problems. Ending samsara. As Nagarjuna said, actions arising from greed, hatred, and delusion are non-virtuous. Actions arising from non-greed, non-hatred, and non-delusion are virtuous. Whether virtuous or non-virtuous, actions are accumulated by the mind. As long as we desire comfort, material wealth, respect, and fame, and as long as we want to avoid suffering, loss, disrespect, and infamy, all actions are driven by greed, hatred, and delusion. Therefore, these actions are more likely to be non-virtuous rather than virtuous. The text says, "It is extremely important not to develop the desire for the happiness of this life. If this desire arises, make efforts to abandon it." Lama Atisha also said, "If the root is poisonous, the branches and leaves are also poisonous. If the root can cure illness, the branches and leaves can also cure illness." Similarly, all actions done with greed, hatred, and delusion are non-virtuous. In other words, any activity, whether farming, business, fighting, helping friends and relatives, or meditating, done with the thought of the 8 worldly concerns, attachment to this life, and driven by greed, hatred, or delusion, will become, as stated here, only the cause of samsara and the lower realms. The text continues, "To obtain the essence, from the very beginning, we should not be attached to this life." Obtaining the essence refers to this precious human body. Then comes a quote from a Vajrayana teaching, often given as motivation during the preparation for a Vajrayana initiation. Those with great devotion, who strive to transcend samsara, are permitted to enter the mandala. We should not desire the results of this life. This means that we should not seek happiness, pleasure, material wealth, respect, fame, etc., which all belong to this life. The quote continues, "Those who desire this life do not achieve the transcendent meaning of samsara." This means that the activities of those who desire this life will not become the cause of enlightenment, the state beyond samsara. You can understand it this way. If your goal is only to achieve happiness in this life, if that is your sole hope, everything you do, work, reciting prayers, receiving initiations, eating, sleeping, does not become holy dharma. All those actions are non-virtuous. Your hope is for happiness, but the only thing you receive from these actions is suffering. Although you work with the aim of achieving happiness in this life, your actions actually become obstacles to this happiness and prevent you from finding it. We can clearly understand this if we look at our own experiences and those of others. The quote concludes, "Striving to transcend samsara will develop the happiness of samsara in this life." This means that those who seek only enlightenment beyond samsara and practice dharma to achieve it, even though they do not seek the happiness of this life, they will find it naturally. In the letter to a friend, Nagarjuna said, "If your hair or clothes catch fire, you immediately put it out." Likewise, making an effort to avoid rebirth is very worthwhile. When a spark falls on you, you get rid of it without delay. You react instantly, even though the spark might only burn your hair or clothes. Surely, you should be more intense in your effort to eliminate the causes of rebirth in the lower realms and the continuous sufferings of cyclic existence. All our problems arise because we take on this samsaric rebirth, these aggregates created by delusion and karma and polluted by the seeds of delusions. Because we take on rebirth, we experience the pervasive suffering of compounded phenomena, and thus experience the suffering of change and the suffering of suffering. We not only experience the sufferings of this life, but this current samsara becomes the foundation for all samsara and sufferings of future lives. Taking on one samsaric existence creates the cause for many more samsaric existences in future lives. This process continues endlessly. Nagarjuna is saying that compared to a small spark falling on us, this situation is much more serious, and we should strive not to take on another rebirth. How can we strive not to take on rebirth? As mentioned in the teachings, craving is the chain that binds us to samsara. Craving is the nearest cause of the next life's samsara. Craving not only causes us to create negative karma now in this life, but when we recognize that we are dying, we cling to our body, our aggregates. Craving and clinging at the moment of death lead us to take on a particular samsaric rebirth in the next life. Because craving is the main cause of samsara, cutting off craving becomes the essential dharma practice to avoid rebirth again. This is the way to end the continuity of samsara. In summary, every dharma practitioner should abandon the desire for the comforts of this life. Unless you abandon this desire, even being called a dharma practitioner is not possible. Anything done with the desire for the pleasures of this life is not dharma. As long as there is craving, there is no dharma practice. There is a Tibetan proverb, "Since a horse does not have the qualities of a lion, do not call a horse a lion." Lama Gyampa, a Kadampa Geshe, said, "Abandoning this life is the beginning of dharma. You have done no dharma practice and feel proud to be called a dharma practitioner. That is madness. Check whether the continuum of your mind includes the first step of dharma, abandoning this life. Even if you think you are not a religious person, because you want happiness and do not want problems, you must control craving. There is no other solution. You cannot reduce craving and other delusions by taking medicine, undergoing surgery, or using external means. The method to practice is to reflect on the faults of craving and think that life is short. This is essential psychology, even if you are not a Buddhist and do not want to be a Buddhist. There is no other solution. To encounter fewer problems in your life, you must reflect on the faults of craving. If craving is eradicated, there are no more problems. As soon as you abandon craving, you will not see any problems anymore. Practicing bodhicitta helps control craving. Exchanging yourself with others, which means abandoning yourself in loving others, or having an extremely kind heart, wanting to eliminate the suffering of others and take on their happiness, solves many problems. Those whose minds are not strong enough to practice bodhicitta should prevent the problems of craving by reflecting on meditations such as precious human rebirth and especially impermanence and death. You can cut craving by remembering that life is short and death can occur at any moment, and by connecting these thoughts with the lower realms, karma, etc. As I mentioned before, Shantideva's secrets of the mind are not advanced realizations. Understanding the faults of the 8 worldly concerns and reflecting on impermanence and death can also be considered secrets of the mind. Meditating on impermanence and death and recognizing the faults of craving, meaning recognizing that all problems arise from it, gives you the strength to decide to abandon this life, to cut off attachment to this life. These 2 practices make you more resolute and weaken worldly concerns. They give you the strength to cut attachment to this life, to free yourself from craving. If you do not recognize these secrets of the mind, although you want happiness and do not want suffering, you will experience the opposite. Without temporary and ultimate happiness, you will wander in samsara and continually experience suffering. But if you recognize these secrets of the mind, the ultimate meaning of Dharma, you can achieve happiness and eliminate suffering and will no longer wander aimlessly in samsara. Thank you for listening. If you found this video helpful, please share it with those who might benefit from it. Don't forget to leave your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button, follow, and turn on the notification bell. This is how you can show your support for me. Once again, thank you very much, and see you in the next videos.